Dan Mitropolsky in computer science presents the simplest neural model and a hypothesis for language.
Understanding how the brain computes is one of the most important unsolved problems in science. On one hand, we have a rich understanding of neurons, the cells that make up the brain. There are about 90 billion neurons in the brain. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have a really rich understanding of complex cognitive phenomena, things like linguistics, psychology, human and animal behavior. We have entire disciplines devoted to understanding these things. But we don't have a clear picture of what happens in between. How do these complex phenomena, these cognitive processes, compile down to neurons? The main approach in neuroscience has been to extract more and more data from the brain and then try to somehow understand or find the logic of the brain from this data, the red arrow in this picture. But this approach is really hard. There's a paper from a few years ago called "Could a Neuroscientist Understand a Microprocessor?" in which the authors took a microprocessor, which is a device whose logic we understand perfectly well, and recorded data from the wires, and then applied the most sophisticated data analysis techniques from neuroscience to this data. But they found that there's really no way that you could extract the compositional logical structure of this device from the data. But on the other hand, if we had a hypothesis that it's a circuit composed of logical gates in a certain way, you could try to confirm that hypothesis in the data. So it's like we don't know what we're looking for in neural data. The brain is a complex biological organ. It has tons of detail at every level of analysis. And we don't know what detail is important and that we can ignore, and which detail is really conceptually significant to the logic of the brain. So in my PhD, I approach this problem in the other direction, the green arrow. I define and study mathematical theories of the brain, where the assumptions are the most fundamental and basic principles from neuroscience. And my goal is to identify a minimal set of assumptions with which you can solve the hard problems that brains solve. So how would you do this? You might start with the most important fact from neuroscience, that all of brain computation compiles down to firing neurons, and define a model that is a big network of neurons that maybe you wire together randomly. This is biologically very realistic, but it can't do anything interesting. So I add a few more key ingredients, a few facts about how inhibition works in the brain, as well as a key fact about how neuron connections change over time. And what I discovered is that with this set of axioms, you can do something highly non-trivial. You can do language. First, you can implement parsing, which means you feed in sentences, and it will compute the grammatical structure of these sentences, so identifying the subject, the object, and so on. And I also discovered that with the same combination of assumptions, you can actually model a crucial step in language learning. It can identify which part of speech words belong to. Are they nouns and verbs and so on? To my knowledge, this is the first model of its kind, a model entirely composed of biologically realistic principles that is a mathematical model and can solve problems as complex as parsing and language learning. More importantly, if I remove any of these axioms from my model, the 5 axioms that define it, I don't know how to solve these problems. All of this suggests that these ingredients may be the important ones. They may capture the essence of how the brain computes.